Hi everyone, this is Alyssa with the BlueLink team, and in this video I'm going to show you a few different ways to create new structures using Photoshop CS6. Occasionally during dissection, a vessel is cut or removed and needs to be replaced using Photoshop. There are three main ways that we do this in the BlueLink office, two of which involve layers. So the first of those is what I tend to use the most. It involves using this rectangular selector tool and works when you already have a structure present that you can work from. Let's say I wanted to add a new artery coming off from right here. I'm going to use my rectangular selector tool and grab this one from over here by clicking and dragging the box until it surrounds the entire artery. Then I'll hit Command C, Command V to copy and paste this selection into a new layer. I'm going to rename this one Artery. Then I'll go back up to my selector tool and you can see that I can very easily move this layer. Now what I'm going to do is hide the background layer and then go over to my eraser tool. I'm going to zoom in a bit using Command plus so I can see a little better. And then I'm going to right click and change these brush settings. So I'm going to bring this brush size down and decrease the hardness quite a bit. And it's looking a little too soft, so I'm going to bring the hardness back up just a little. And it looks like it needs to go up just a little bit more. Now that I have my settings fixed, I'm going to carefully trace around the edge of my structure to remove the background that's surrounding it. When you're doing this, the hardness of your brush is very important. If it's too hard, the structure is going to end up looking fake, but if it's too soft, the layer starts to lose its definition. Both ways leave you with a lower photo quality once you're done, so it's important to make sure that your hardness looks good before you actually start removing the background. Now, this isn't quite as important the farther you are away from the structure you want to keep, so I'm going to make my brush size a little bigger, and I'll bring up the hardness a little bit too to work on removing these areas that aren't as close to the actual artery I want to keep. I like to increase the size because it helps me make sure that I've gotten rid of all of the background so that little pieces don't show up in the photo later where they aren't supposed to. Now that I've done that, I'm going to bring my size and hardness back down a little bit so I can get nice clean edges as I come in close to the artery again. Getting the eraser tool close to the edge and removing as much of the background from the sides as possible is key to getting a structure that looks real when you bring the background back in. I'm going to zoom in a little more so I can get these edges a little bit better. Again, we want to remove as much of this new layer's background as possible, so hiding that original background layer and getting pretty close up really helps you to differentiate between what you want to erase and what you want to keep. I'm going to make my brush even smaller and bring the hardness down some more so I can get these corners a little better. Now I'm going to zoom out and bring the background back in. And I'll actually zoom back in a little bit. You can see the edges are still looking a little bit harsh, so I'm going to go back in with my eraser just a bit more. I'll lower the hardness to get more of a soft looking edge, and in some of these places I'll even go back again once I get this new artery put into its final place on the heart. Alright, now I'm going to zoom back out and go up to my selector tool, and I'm going to move this artery because I want it to be coming off of about here. Now that it's in place properly, I'll zoom back in, and if I wanted to make my new artery a little smaller, I can click on the corner and bring it in. Again, if I hold shift, it'll do this with the proportions locked. If you want to do any other edits, you need to make sure the selection is highlighted by clicking on the box surrounding it, and then you can right click and pull up this menu of options. This warp tool can be helpful when you need to change the shape of your new structure slightly. You just click and hold as you drag these anchor points and you can see that it will manipulate the shape of the layer. We use this and another tool, the Puppet Warp, that we'll have a separate video tutorial on, to make sure that any structure we copy from a pre-existing part of the photo doesn't look too similar to the original image. You can also use the flip horizontal or vertical options from the same menu to help with this. Now that I have the artery in the final spot that I want it, I'm going to go back in with my eraser tool and work on the area where it's branching off of the other artery. I'm going to right click and take the hardness all the way down and increase my brush size a little bit because I want these edges to be very soft so that it blends in well. Next, I'll just go in and erase a part of the layer, careful not to take away so much that you lose where the two structures overlap. This step alone can really help the areas blend in. I'm going to zoom in and you can see how I erased a bit too much over here and the hard line of the original artery is visible through the new layer. To fix this, I can go over to my stamp tool, make it a bit smaller, and simply take some of the color from the new artery and bring it over to cover that transparent part up and help the edge blend a little more. You can also use the stamp tool to help blend areas together by changing the opacity of the area that's being stamped. I'm going to increase the size just a bit. I'll lower the opacity here at the top, and I'll change my angle using the stamp tool menu. Let's start at 10 degrees, maybe 25 instead. You can see how that's a little more transparent than the typical stamp. I'm going to actually turn my opacity down even more, and now that's just blending itself a little bit better. As I do this, I like to periodically zoom out to check the appearance from a distance as well, to make sure that once I finish this edit close up, it's still going to look good farther out. I'm going to reset my angle now and exit the stamp menu. And the next tool I'm going to introduce is called the burn tool. So this can be found on the left-hand menu. This tool is going to darken the exposure by your chosen percentage, and this is what helps us darken the areas where there should be shadows in the background near a structure that we've added. You can also darken the edges of the new layer itself, or the edge of any structure on the background to help them stand out a little bit more. You do have to be careful not to go too dark with this tool, as it can start looking pretty fake. So right now I'm darkening the area of the background where I want it to look like the artery is going into the muscle, so it looks like there's a little bit of a hole there. Then I'm going to increase the size of the brush and go through and create a slight shadow where there would be one under the actual artery. This helps make your structure look more realistic, because in a normal photo, that's where the shadow should be. And if we zoom back out, you can see that our new layer is right here and blends in pretty well with the artery it's supposed to branch off of. The other way to use layers to create a new structure is by using the magnetic lasso to select the specific area that you want and use the same Command-C, Command-V method as we did with the rectangular selector tool. The only caution that goes along with this is making sure that your feather isn't so soft that thinner areas of the selection become completely transparent. If you wanted to do this without layers, you could use the stamp tool to directly copy the areas and borders that you want from an artery that already exists. This can give you a bit more freedom with the appearance and shape of the new vessel, but it can also be much more time-consuming and difficult to make look realistic. I often use this method in conjunction with creating a new layer to alter either the shape or branching pattern of an existing structure to make it more unique. One additional tool that I want to mention is the dodge tool, and it's related to the burn tool. If you right-click on the icon for the burn tool, you get a list of 3 different options, and one of them is the dodge tool. This tool does the exact opposite of the burn tool and raises the exposure in the areas you use it in. If I go over this artery, I need to get out of my artery layer. I'm going to increase the percentage just to make it easier to see. You can see how the whole area gets lighter. So I'm going to undo all of this really quick. The main reason that we use the dodge tool is when we're trying to make an artery look a little more round, you can brighten the middle of it and darken the edges, and that makes it look a bit more 3D. And one last thing, when you have a layer selected, you can use the adjustments menu I talked about in the basic adjustments video on our channel to make the new layer's coloring look more like the background that it's blending into. As a quick demonstration, I'll go to the color balance and move this dial away from the yellow, and it only changes the structures in the layer I have selected. That wraps up this step in the BlueLink editing process. Thank you for watching, and feel free to check out our channel for more tutorials and anatomy-based content.